Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu.
So this week we will be unpacking a bit of the dependently arising experience, just coming on the tail end of the pithy instructions or overview, actually, of the Four Noble Truths. And for those of you online, just remember, at any time you can unmute, ask a question. I love dialogue, and back and forth, it helps quite a bit. So let's pop up the text, see where we're at. So dependent arising and emptiness. In the previous, we'll just put it that way, previous explanations of the Four Noble Truths, that was last week, several topics repeatedly arose. Ignorance, which grasped inherent existence, the emptiness of inherent existence, which is the ultimate nature of all persons and phenomena, the wisdom realizing emptiness that counteracts ignorance, and nirvana, which is the state of peace attained from doing so. Another essential topic, dependent arising, ties all of these together. So there's a lot of words in there that can easily get lost in. So let's just look at ignorance, which grasps at inherent existence. So that's the problem. The problem is that I perceive this computer as being inherently self-existent from its own side, right? Clearly, it's not me, it's a computer. We can all recognize as a computer, right? But is it a computer or is it a laptop? What makes that different? And then we can start breaking these parts down. We'll get into it. And PC versus Mac. We can start getting into some different things here. But there's nothing inherently that makes this a laptop or a PC, right? That's a concept in my mind, a PC or a laptop. This is a device that is made up of parts and pieces, components, and it's not independent, right? It's not there. It had to come together. Somebody had to think of how to make a computer. Somebody had to, the first big ones, of course, had these massive rooms. I still remember the big floppy disks that we used to fire up the DOS commands, and you start thinking about how this came into existence. There's nothing independent about it, is there? I mean, it's very interdependent, and it arises in dependence upon the knowledge, the science, the parts, the metal, the electricity, the components, the chips, the need for a computer. All these things came together for me to have this device that I'm going to call an HP laptop. And so it's not independent, right? It's not separate. But I kind of see it separate. It's a computer, right? It's a laptop. I don't see all the causes and conditions. I don't see that it arises independence upon. And what I don't even recognize is that laptop is an idea in my mind. It's a concept, right? There's nothing inherently about laptop. A cat is not seeing a laptop here, right? Just seeing something. And we don't typically look at people, places, things. Matter of fact, Sam gave me an apple fritter that I had on Monday morning for breakfast. And I could sit there and go, that apple fritter seemed very independent, very delicious. But, what are all the things that gave rise to having an apple fritter? That was the healthy kind, right? And so it's delicious or it's not delicious. Those of you who've been to many teachings, we go through where the delicious is and how we experience. Some people like apple fritter, some people don't. And so we see things and they look independent, and then we attribute qualities and attributes to them. apple fritter, delicious, not delicious, so forth. And then we think they're in these things. And we don't realize that there's actually a lot more interplay in how I experience, whether it's an apple fritter or a computer or this cell phone. And how I experience would be very different than how you might experience it, even though we're looking at the same phenomena or eating the same meal. Some people actually don't like Brussels sprouts. I don't understand that at all. Totally don't get that. So we will say this is a delicious meal, and someone doesn't like that meal. Some people say it's a terrible meal. I like it. And it seems objective, what we're saying, and it seems like things have those qualities of delicious, not delicious, this way or that way. And it's in that object. But if we look more deeply, that's really not inherently in that object. There's an interdependent experience happening here based on a myriad of causes and conditions. So our misperception, though, is that person's a jerk, this person's funny, so-and-so's, someone that I like, so-and-so, someone I don't like. But they're that way. And I'm not even bringing to mind, my judgments or my qualities or my conditions that is judging someone. So that's starting with, we're just in the first couple of sentences. Ignorance which grasps an inherent existence means something exists independently, inherently from its own side. That's how we perceive things generally. The emptiness of inherent existence, which is the ultimate nature of all persons and phenomenon. So how things exist exactly is they're empty of all these qualities that we're imputing upon them. Right? They're not inherently within that object, person, or experience. So that's the opposite. That's what liberates us, the wisdom, realizing emptiness that counteracts ignorance. And nirvana, which is the state of peace attained from doing so. In other words, once we perceive and understand this experience, then we're free. We're no longer a prisoner of our conditioned mind and our misperception. So all of Buddhism is always going at what's true. How do things exist? Is that true? What's true? And Dharma ultimately is truth. It's the recognition of the nature of truth. And so that's why it's so important to investigate. We like to debate, we like to explore, we like to challenge ideas. Nothing in Buddhist teaching is ever based on, because it's in the text. The book said so. Buddha said very clearly, no, you test it, you see if it's true, you check it, see if it's true. The only way you're going to have any real faith is a faith that's built upon analyzing, testing, discovery. So that's why right now there's so much emphasis on neuroscience and science and Buddhism, because they're both coming at it from a perspective of wanting to know how things exist. So I just want to unpack a little bit of what was, just hitting you right off the bat. All of these things were touched on in the Four Noble Truths, and now he's going to share that the Madhyamaka tenet system, so that's the middle way, this Madhyamaka, it's an approach of Buddhism, as explained by the Indian sage Nagarjuna, speaks of 3 levels of dependent arising. And ultimately, the point that's going to be made is if we understand things arise in dependence upon, nothing arises from nothing, nothing, let's say, something does not arise from nothing. That's a better way of putting it. That everything we experience ourselves, any experience we have, arises in dependence upon causes, conditions, and things, right? Nothing came from nowhere. This is the way to recognize the empty nature of our experience and how we get freedom. So it's a really good approach. So the Indian sage Nagarjuna speaks of 3 levels of dependent arising. The first, which is common, to all Buddhist tenet systems is causal dependence. The fact that products, what we call conditioned things, everything being conditioned in a way of this experience, depend on causes. A table depends on the wood, which is its substantial cause. More accurately, you'd say a wooden table depends on the wood, right? We have metal tables, wood. It's good to be precise. So a wood table depends on the wood, which is its substantial cause that actually turns into the result. So this is going to be key. We don't want to just go by this. A primary cause for anything has to be of the same stuff, right? So wood would create a wood table. The best analogy, and it's funny because I always want to make a different one because I always use the same one. I think, man, these people have heard this a million times, but it's so clear. And I can't find a better one. What is the cause for a tree? Cause for the tree is a seed, right? Seed becomes a tree. So it's the same stuff, right? It's the seed is a material of the seed will sprout and ultimately become a tree. And then that tree will die and it'll be another seed. So when they're talking about what actually turns out the substantial cause, the primary cause, is always the same stuff. If you didn't have a seed for a tree, it doesn't matter how much, soil, water, nutrients, doesn't matter. You're not going to have a tree. But there's these, as he's pointing out, the people who make, in this case, the table are the cooperative condition that helps bring the results. So we have primary causes, sort of secondary causes. We often call them conditions, causes, conditions. So the conditions for a tree would be the soil, the nutrients, the water, the sun, right? So a seed with these conditions, you get a tree. No seed, no tree. It doesn't matter about the conditions. This is going to be really important. We talked about earlier about mind. So mind being not material, that my awareness is not material. A brain is an organ that's material, but a mind. And so he was making the point that that there's the thoughts, images, mental activity, that's non-material, right? And so, so this is really going to help us a little bit later understand the very nature of mind, of mental experience versus material, physical experience. So let's get back to this. So all Buddhist tenets understand that things, exist in causal dependence, right? Depends on causes. The table exists on the wood, which is its substantial cause, what actually turns into the result, and the people who make it, who are the cooperative conditions that helps bring about the result. Similarly, our body, mind, and present rebirth depend on their respective causes and conditions. Such dependency rules out the possibility of things arising haphazardly without a cause. It also precludes things arising due to discordant causes, things that do not have the ability to cause them. Barley cannot grow from rice seeds, and happiness does not come from destructive actions. So right here, they're just making some good points that, well, things don't come from nothing, and certain things can't produce other things, right? Want an apple tree? You need to plant apple seed. Barley's not going to come from rice seeds. And so going back to in the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha didn't invent anything new. He just explained how things work. That's all he did. This is how things work. And this is as a result to how these things work. This is the cause of suffering, and this is the way we eliminate those causes. So he's explaining the nature of our experience. You want rice, you get rice seeds. You want barley, You got to use barley. And then they throw in here really nicely. And happiness does not come from destructive actions. Now, there's a big misperception around that. So in addition to chemical, biological, and physical causality, karma and its effect, let me say, karma and its effects is another system of causal dependence. Karma is volitional actions done physically, verbally, or mentally. These causes bring their effects. The births that we take, our experiences in our lives, and the environment in which we are born. So we've got the sort of physical causality and karma. Karma is one of the most misunderstood, I think, things that people talk about. But here they're talking about volitional activity. So things that you do with intention, with a motivation, things that you have an intent around. And things that are done mentally, physically, right? Body, speech, or mind. So we can speak it, we can do it. There can be a physical action to it. So they always talk about body, speech, and mind. I can do it with my body, I can do it with my speech or my thoughts. A lot of times, some teachers will just translate karma as sort of, intentional acts or intentional thought or intentional speech. So what's our motivation? The motivation behind the karma is going to have the greatest weight. But technically, action, any movement of the mind will create karma. Anything that we do, there's cause and result, karma, cause and result. So we have, built in here, first off, the things that we can physically talk about. Apple seed, apple tree, we get that. Well, now we're going to explore, why does John find an apple fritter delicious? Is it the apple fritter or something else? Why would someone else not like an apple fritter? Why would I like Brussels sprouts and someone not? Well, now we're going to have karma come into play a bit. And the statement here is that virtuous actions bring about a pleasant result. Non-virtuous, unpleasant. Straightforward. So if I'm going to have a pleasant experience from a phenomenon that I see as Brussels sprouts, there had to be some good karmic imprints that are ripening in a way that when I come in contact with Brussels sprouts, I have a pleasant experience. Somebody else's karma experiences Brussels sprouts is, why would anybody eat that? Right? So now there's going to be how I'm experiencing this world. My karmic imprints and conditioning are going to have a lot to do with how I experience food, people, events, things that we're doing, and whether I find someone funny or irritating or annoying or so forth. A lot of that's going to have to do with my karmic imprints and how I'm finding things, how I'm experiencing things. It's also going to have to do with the condition, experience, or phenomenon I'm working with. But I'm bringing a lot to the party. Right? And that's kind of the big issue here, is that we don't realize we're bringing a lot to the party. One of my examples is like coloring books. Right? If you see a coloring book, we got outlines of things. And humans, we're mostly water. Isn't that interesting? I find that interesting. 70%, 72%, somewhere. Mostly water. So I kind of like to think of people as water sacks. A bunch of water sacks come into the room. And you have shapes to you. But how I'm perceiving you, it's kind of like I'm filling in the details, like a coloring book. Right? I'm seeing you, but I'm kind of filling and fleshing out the details. Someone else sees you a little bit differently than I do, or experiences you a little bit differently than I do. And that's where karma and this dependently arising and understanding this interdependent experience that's happening, this you do exist, you beautiful water sacks, and how I'm experiencing, I'm sort of filling in the details, my conditioning does. And but then I stick those attributes on you. As though that's who you are. I know who you are. I know, you know, and as though those qualities are inherent within you, but they're not inherent within you. They are arising in dependence upon my conditioning, the way I grew up, what I've been exposed to, the experiences I've had, and as well as what you're bringing, right? What you're bringing. And so there's a thing that's coming together, but it's very dynamic, very dynamic. But it looks very, I know Sam. I tell you all about Sam, as though those qualities are inherent with him.
Yeah, so John, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
So getting back to apple fritters and Brussels sprouts, what would be a volitional action that would bring about your experience of those things as being delicious?
Right. So the thing about karma that's tricky is it's very delayed. So on the surface, a lot of things that we do that might be negative seem that they're going to bring about a positive result. You know, I told so-and-so off and I feel pretty good about it. And, you know, so there's like this immediate, I did something terrible, but I felt pretty good, right? So it looks like I told them off, feel good, cause result. But actually the way it works is previously, and Buddhist philosophy would even say most karma is even previous lives. Some of it, you know, might be in this life. Because of those karmic imprints that we're bringing into the world at birth and so forth, that virtuous actions that we have done in the past, you know, not as they will give rise to, you know, the type of people we're born to, the types of, you know, some kids like this food and some kids like that food, but all of those were from virtuous, if it's pleasant, activities of body, speech, and mind that had taken place previously, and they're providing now the texture, the layer, the conditioning when I come into this life. And then what I start to engage in with that will nurture and grow those qualities. So the answer then would be what makes the Brussels sprouts delicious was virtuous activities a long time ago that have ripened. And then they ripen when the conditions that arise, that's his Brussels sprouts. And so basically, if you really want to like food, just be a good person. I mean, it's awesome. You know, you can eat just about anything. And this applies not just with food or the you know, the things that we eat, how we experience people, right? The worst thing to do when we're stuck with people we don't like is to get angry at those people and, you know, talk about those people. And, you know, if you want to stop being annoyed by people, the last thing you want to do is try to get away from them and try to talk bad about them and tell people how annoying they are. What you're doing is actually validating that annoying experience. And we don't even realize that annoying is a mental and emotional experience, it's not in that person. Somebody actually likes that person. I don't know why. They think they're funny. And I find them annoying. So the understanding here then with Buddhism is if we start to recognize that I keep wanting to arrange the world out there so I'll feel a certain way, we miss the point that through virtuous activities, I'm creating my future experience and the opportunity like Brussels sprouts. Yes.
I'm with you on everything that you're saying, but I keep going back to cilantro, and you know, there's a genetic marker or something. To me, it tastes like soap. Other people love it, I can tolerate it, but I don't enjoy it. How do you differentiate between, you know, what is neuroscience or in the genes from karmic imprint? Like, how do you know that?
Okay, so for those of you online, the question was around, let's get into genes, our DNA, some things, we have predispositions for things. There's things have been passed down through generations within genetic stream with parents, grandparents, etc. And so if we understand karma then from even the body we have, the DNA that we have, the things that we've had, it's all arisen as a result of our karmic imprints. That's why we have the body we have, the predispositions we have, and so forth. What's really interesting around neuroscience is that we can actually alter gene expression, and you can do that without, you can dial up or dial down our gene expression with different practices and how we live our lives. And so even though we have a predisposition or a gene for something, it doesn't need to express itself in our lifetime, and we can dial it up and down. So that's some pretty fascinating epigenetics that we get to use. Yes.
Along the same lines, like with behavioral issues with children, and obviously a lot of those are causes and conditions from their present lives or their parents and how they affect them. But even like the small child who is having a hard time and is like easily upset or has a short temper, or I see those things a lot when I'm looking at their parents. How did this happen? And you're saying that this is from their karmic conditions from past lives that cause them to behave in this way when they're so young, when presently their parents.
And to have those parents and those parents, and they would say that anyone that's related to us in this lifetime, we've done this a lot. We're very intertwined. Our karma is very connected.
So none of it's our fault.
Actually, everything's our fault. That's the whole thing, but not fault as though you're a bad person. It's an empowering thing. It's saying that the life I'm experiencing is the result of things and conditioning and events. Now I've done that, but it also means that I can change it all, right?
Can I ask something else too? So along those same lines, if they had, patient parents who work with them and teachers and friends who work with them to change that behavior, are those other people changing not only their karmic imprint, but also that child or that person's?
Yeah.
How can you talk a little more about that, how that would work?
Can everyone online hear that question, or should I repeat that? I'm seeing a few head nods. Okay. So again, then when we realize that there's a lot of people helping, shape our experience, troubled youth, and we get, some people that help us out and guide us and help change. Well, they're creating karma, and they're going to have an impact on my karma if I'll put myself on the knucklehead kid. Okay. A lot of people help me. I have quite a troubled past. And so there's an interplay. So right now we're creating a karma, right? So there's a karma in this experience we're having now. There's the karma of Carbondale, where we are, right? The city, and there's the karma of California and Colorado. There's just so many multi-layers of karma, and it's all very intertwined and interdependent. And what you're going to find is there's really nothing independent about you. And when we talk about karma, like the karma people say, have the karma to have an accident in a car. Yes, some of that you had some influence, maybe. Well, definitely had something, some part in it. But also for that accident to happen, there's all the karma of the people who made the cars, the people who, created the streets, whether or not there's a street sign, whether there are causes for that or not a street sign, or, the other drivers, like none of it, that kind of stuff is all your fault. And so collectively, we all have karma of being human, right? We have a human karma, and we're all experiencing this room very similarly, a little independent, but very similarly. And so there's a very interactive, interdependent, karmas that are at play, besides the very independent karma. And it's not independent, very personal karma. That's a good way of putting it, a personal karma. That due to my personal choices, they're going to have an outcome of pleasurable or unpleasurable and experiences, including which parents I might have, what kinds of people be drawn in my life, that all those conditionings are ripening on levels that are taking place far beyond what we know. Like, I think of, here we are sitting in this room, and the Dalai Lama's image is up here, and we're talking about this Buddhism in English. Centuries back, how many people were doing prayers and aspirations that the Dharma remain, that conditions ripen for other sentient beings, that this gets maintained, that people memorize things, and all of that had to take place so that we would be here in this moment. So there's nothing, at all, independent in that sense. And but our individual karma and how we engage in life will help put us in conditions that could support that growth and that change, and put us around people that could help us. So we don't want to confuse my sort of personal karma, which is very direct. I mean, that's what I like about it, is I have, whatever John, in this body, I have the single most powerful way of creating my future. Do I act with virtue or non-virtue? Do I cultivate wisdom or misperception? I can do that. Now, the outer experience I have, whether I get in a car wreck and all those, I don't have much control over all that. But as I engage in whether they're challenging events or fun events or whatever events, the more I bring the mind of virtue, of loving kindness, of the 10 virtuous actions in response to whether it's a difficult thing or a fun thing or neutral things, I'm creating all the conditions for my future and how I'm going to experience that. So everything that's happening in my life is an opportunity to improve my future, which is awesome. And then the negative things that are happening, the beautiful thing about that is, well, that karma has ripened, it's gone. So if I have a bunch of hard, painful events, well, that karma has ripened. How I respond to those is creating my future karma. So if I play a victim and do this and complain and anger and blame and do harmful things in response to something difficult, or the annoying people in my life, and then talk about how annoying they are and complain about them, I'm actually just perpetuating a problem. But if I respond with some wisdom and some understanding and an opportunity to use this event to cultivate, some wisdom and some resiliency and some virtue, I'm creating my future. And so what's, I like about that, I think I may have mentioned before, is there's a lot of, even, within Tibetan Buddhism and so forth, that you can go to a guru or an astrologer or, go to a high lama, have a divination done, or what we call a mo divination. And, and there's this great writing I've had, I'm not sure, maybe it was Shantideva, but I can't pin, so I don't want to misquote. But he said, why would you go to some lama to find out about your past or your future? If you want to know about your past, look at your life today. Because what you did created this. And if you have a rare and precious human birth with all these resources, you did good. If you want to know about your future, look at how you're living your life today. Just nails it. No worry chasing all that. Whatever's happened has been through a myriad of causes and conditions, and how I respond to those is creating the future. So it's just so empowering. But it is dependent upon others, right? Everything I have is dependent upon others. Food, clothing, words, education, everything is because of countless others. And my problem is I don't recognize that. I want to take credit for my life. and yet there's nothing in my life that hasn't arisen, simply from my side. So, but I also wanted to tap into your point. So young kids, so the thing that makes sense about rebirth for me, and again, I think everyone needs to, do their own thing, don't just believe it. But kids come into this world with very different dispositions, right? Some finding things very irritable, some things finding very intense. I mean, I know kids who are prodigies. I know kids that have, incredible readers at a very young age. I mean, we've seen all this, right? There's prodigies, there's kids that we can have kids that are twins, same genetics, different dispositions. Like that just explains it to me. Like you're coming in the world with some stuff, right? You're coming in the world with some stuff, and you're going to have some taste and some preferences and some hardships, or some kids are more open, some kids are. But the beautiful thing here is none of that is fixed, right? That troubled child can become, a different child. I was a troubled child. I couldn't speak when I was younger. I had speech impediment. I had a lot of struggles, a lot of issues in school, and ultimately, as some of you know, drug addiction, violence, all those things in my life. That's not who I am today, right? And by the way, I like almost all food. Side note. Not big on grapefruit. So, we're malleable and our experience is dynamic, but it takes time. So, this is pointing out, there's dependently arising, outer experiences and phenomenon. And then they brought up here the karmic ones, sort of the conditioning, and that also is very much cause and effect, but it's in dependence upon not just my previous, but your previous life. I mean, we're all here, and your conditions, whether someone stops at a stop sign or not could have a huge difference on our life, right? But then whether or not there's a stop sign, who built the car, where the mountain, there's just so much that's happening for us to be here in what used to be a school, which now, is the Dharma Center. So all this is very simple, straightforward. We got this, right? I think we're still in the second paragraph. So in addition to the chemical, biological, and physical causality, now karma, cause and effect. Now, to not overcomplicate karma, we talk about those types of things like virtue and so forth. It's also very straightforward. I love one of the most brilliant Buddhist scholars and monastics. They asked, karma, and he said, well, what's the karma for me to be, he's German, for me to speak English? And he said, the fact that I went to school and learned English. In other words, I created a cause to learn English. And so it doesn't always have to be that mystical too, that we can also recognize that if you want to learn a foreign language, you got to create a cause for that. You study a foreign language. And so cause and result. We need to create the cause. I won't just speak a foreign language just because. It's not willy-nilly. There's discordant causes which can't create things, and there's those that can. But I liked his answer. It was just like, what we think, say, and do a lot will be what we think, say, and do a lot more, right? Our habits are built upon doing habits. So one way that karma plays out, very cause and effect, is if I do something a lot, then it kind of gets in my neural pathways, gets in my conditioning, gets in my habits. And then I'm prone to do that even without thinking, right? Now I've got this impulse, this desire, this habitual way of living and seeing the world. And it's simply from doing things again and again. Thoughts, I can bring to mind certain thoughts, reapply certain beliefs, and again and again. But those are all changeable. We can be changeable. I think I'm kind of a morning person now. Maybe. Trust me, getting out of bed is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And yeah, I can do it at 4 a.m. All right, Roxana, I think that's you.
Yes. I know that Tenzin Palmo was a British woman who ended up in India and found her teacher there. And I was just curious what anybody says about being reincarnated in vastly different locations or in other races.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing. I'm just curious about that.
Not sure I have an answer for you there. I mean, what was clear is that at 19 years old, she ran off to India. She's driven. I mean, first time she heard Buddhism, that stuff made sense. Matter of fact, her story is her science teacher. She kept out. She's like in elementary school or something. Asked her science teacher, they're breaking down to atoms or whatever. Well, what's less than an atom? What's less than that? Well, nothing. And she thought, that's not a good enough answer. There's got to be something that gave rise to an atom, So here's someone with a lot of imprints, a lot of preconditioning at a very young age, and then got, a little taste of Buddhism that made sense to her, went to India, and she found her teacher, but, like knew each other, and, the implication of, from her and from her teachers, previous life that they've known. And so it was all unfolding, and why she was born in England versus in India where a teacher was, or in Tibet where, they may have had previous time, nobody's going to have a real answer to that. Nobody can see all that. But I'll give you one benefit from that. Being born in England and having a cultural background from there, going to India, learning Tibetan, becoming a yogi, spending 12 years in a cave, coming out and being able to teach in English to Western minds. Now, here's a woman that speaks perfect English, knows the Western culture, has spent 12 years in a cave, knows Tibetan, is a pure yogi, and can teach us that someone born in Tibetan culture, Indian culture, we wouldn't be able to relate to or wouldn't know our mind stream the way that we can. And so there's one immediate benefit of someone being born in a different land, in a different culture, that's going to benefit the Dharma and the opportunity to help many others. I mean, I remember reading her book the first time. It's one of the reasons I became a Buddhist, felt like it was doable. And, again, I mean, I remember reading that book. I was in Long Beach, California many years ago. And I had no idea that I would ever in my lifetime meet her, let alone that we got to stay at her monastery and hang out and have, tea with her, and that I would one day meet this person in this book, right? So all this is playing out. There's things playing out at much bigger scales than we know when we're sitting there. I mean, I was in a teaching by Dalai Lama, 4th row. I'm a school teacher. Just a guy sitting in the row, listening to Dalai Lama give a teaching. 2 years later, I'm a Buddhist monk, and I am in charge of the teaching at the same venue, hosting the Dalai Lama for 3 days of teaching and greeting His Holiness as we're hosting him for 3 days of teaching in the very same venue 2 years later. Right? So, be careful when you go to these things. You might get a haircut. and learn to wear a dress. Who knows, right? Who knows? So, these things, just all the dynamic. I'm looking at the Here and Now Center, Dusty and Gunnison, a place that I'd lived when I was 19 and actually 20, and, near homeless and so forth. And anyway, there's a Dharma Center there listening now. And just all these intertwined connections in life and things that unfold. And they unfold, with the conditions ripening for things at a much greater scale than we see. And our problem is we don't see it. And we think we're, this independent being, and these people are like that, and so forth, and don't even recognize people we've never met have done things for us on scales that, we don't know, including the roads we drive on. Who built those? We're supported all day long by a myriad of things and people that did things centuries ago. So anyway, hopefully that gives some thought to how being born in a different culture away from something might have served a whole different benefit that wouldn't have been available otherwise. Okay, let me see where we're at in the text. I only have a few more. Whoops, keep hitting that wrong button there. The incorrect button. Yeah, let's see if we can get to, I might be able to end this year. So the second type of dependency is dependent designation, which has two branches: mutual dependence and mere designation by term and concept. I said we're getting in deeper water, right? Mutual dependence refers to things existing in relation to each other, long and short. What's long? It's relative to what's short, right? Who's tall? Very different in different cultures, short. Parent and child, whole and parts, agent, object, and action. Our body, which is a whole, depends on its parts: arms, legs, skin, internal organs. The organs and limbs only become parts in dependence upon the body as a whole. So this dependency in terms of relation to what? Relation to parent, child, body, parts, etc. This designation of our body, which is dependent on parts. A hard spherical. Say it again. What he said. Object, a round object, let's just put it that way. The size of a small apple becomes a baseball only because there's the game of baseball. A pitcher, a batter, and a bat. Apart from this context, this round object would neither be called a baseball nor function as a baseball. A parent is identified only in relation to a child, and someone becomes a child only in relation to a parent. Neither the parent nor the child exist independently of each other. And so now we're going to see how things exist in relation to other things and objects, and we designate them, this label, based upon a relationship with other objects or things or experience. A lot of dogs don't realize tennis balls are tennis balls. They really don't. What we see as a tennis ball in relation to a tennis racket. So on a daily basis, we use conventions and terms to engage in actions based on language. Doing this does not require there to be a direct one-on-one object referent for each term. Rather, terms are defined relationally and derive meaning only in the context of mutually dependent relations. Clear as day, right? Not much commentary on that. So, I mean, any of the terms, again, laptop, right? Anything that we're label is we can, these are actually concepts in our minds. Right? Laptop, computer, technically this is a computer. People still call them cell phones, right? but it really is a computer that you can use as a phone. And so just understanding these relationships and understand that these are concepts, cell phone. Some people call them mobile phones, computer. All of these are conventions and terms, right, that we use that are helpful. And that's where we're going to stop it there. Because the next piece, I think, will nail it a little bit better. The second type of dependent designation is mere designation by term and concept. Independence on the collection of arms, legs. Boy, we just need to pause here for a minute, because this is a whole other 45-minute discussion. But most of you know, like if I have a cup, I don't have a cup here today. I like to use the cup thing. Even the idea of, if I have a cup, is it a cup or is it a mug? Is it a mug or a cup? We really start getting as though it is this or that. But how we use it, we can use it differently. And but the things that make up a cup, aren't the cup, right? The cup is an idea. A mug is an idea. These are concepts that we will designate on these objects. But when we really try to find the PC or the laptop, because the Mac could look like a laptop, Mac, the PC. When you really try to find it in the object itself, it's not there, right? The PC part of this laptop is not. You go down the parts, the conditions, and all that. It's an idea. It's a concept, which exists in my mind, not here. And so that's where we're getting to, is that the second type of dependent designation is a mere designation based on term and concept. And but we don't recognize that. We really think this inherently is a HP laptop, PC, operating system from its own side, independent, separate. But it's actually, everything I just said is kind of ideas and labels in my mind. And a cat is not going to use this as a PC. Wouldn't probably maybe pick it over a Mac. I don't know. We don't even want to go there. So this is going to get a little more clear in its next part. And but I want to kind of wrap it up to where it's something that's practical in our lives. This is going in the direction of us starting to explore more deeply our experience and how we apply labels and how we attribute qualities to people, places, things, events, and foods. And start to notice that but that's how I experience the world, and I keep thinking it is. We even say things like, that guy will never change. And yet everybody's changing all the time, every moment, right? So the starting point where they want us to explore a little bit is to understand how I'm experiencing the world is not how it actually is. But there is a functional world. There are, sort of guiding structure to it. But I've been kind of playing it, the wrong way. I keep trying to get my environment to make me happy instead of recognizing that if I change how I engage with the world, my environment becomes a very pleasant experience. We're kind of backwards. And so as long as I keep basing my happiness on getting what I want, not losing it, these 8 worldly concerns, receiving praise, avoiding criticism, seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, good reputation, bad reputation, these 8 worldly concerns, like that's how I'm going to be happy, is to get what I want, to have pleasurable experiences, have people think highly of me, receive praise, not get criticism, not have a bad reputation, avoid, not have painful experiences or not get the things I want. You're going to suffer a lot because constantly we're not going to get what we want. Constantly we'll lose what we have. Constantly, people will have both praise and criticism. These things are the nature of our existence. And if I attach my happiness to those things, it'll be a very short happiness. That thing will come and go. And even the thing you once treasured, it's not going to bring you joy. I mean, your favorite song 1,000 times will no longer be your favorite song. Some people aren't even really happy with their flip phones anymore. I don't know why. But boy, when I got my first Razor flip phone, I thought that was the bomb. And, relationships, jobs, man, I just got that new job, man, this is so cool. And after a while, man, I have to go to work. What a bummer. And so we don't even recognize that we keep chasing that instead of cultivating within ourselves contentment, well-being, how incredible it is that we woke up, that we're alive, that we can walk. Anybody here have a toothache? Anybody out there have a toothache? How cool is that? Doesn't it suck to have a toothache? And when a toothache goes away, how do you feel? You feel pretty awesome. Man, I don't have that toothache anymore. And then we forget about that. Look at all the things that we have in our life that brought us joy and pleasure that we just totally take for granted now. And we want something else to make us happy. Man, I remember getting a 19-inch color TV before remotes. I was pretty happy. We don't have a TV, do we? Okay, not a good analogy. Because you don't need a TV. Anyway. So as long as we keep chasing the outer experience as though that is going to be it, that actually creates discontent and struggle and suffering. And so the dynamic is starting to understand what's the mind I'm bringing to the event. How can I cultivate contentment instead of desire? How can I appreciate what I have? How can I, just walk in my own house and think how incredible it is I get to live here? Or that I have some food today. Or that I have 2 feet. Don't have a toothache. Have a body. Get to live in a place like this. Get to live wherever you are living. I see people in California and Idaho. Some people live at a beach in Ventura. I bet I could be happy if I lived there. And so we're going to come back to this next week. We'll, keep unpacking dependently arising. But the big takeaway is that nothing exists independently. And that's kind of the key things. This is my phone. And if I lose this phone, I'm going to be pretty unhappy. Me and mine. Somebody steals this phone, at what point does it stop being my phone? And what makes it my phone? How many people are involved for me to have a phone? How many people are responsible for me making a living, getting a paycheck? Wow. Me and mine, you and yours. It's a lot more of we and ours. And the mind that I bring to any event is going to have a huge impact on how I experience it. Including whether I got enough sleep last night. Might not find you so annoying. Yeah. All right, we're going to pause there. And next week, we're going to pick up this text here on dependent origination, which is how things exist. And then he's going to he, she, actually, Thubten Chödron's writing this too, the many people bringing the voice to this text are going to point out how if I start understanding dependent origination, it's going to cut through the misperception of inherently existing events and people and things. And right away, going to cut through a lot of suffering. So all that's clear to everyone, right? Clear as clear. Nailed it. All right. Awesome. I'm just going to stop talking because there's so much to it. And we'll pick it up next week. You got any announcements, Rachel, or anything?
Yeah, I have a couple announcements. We have our monthly day-long meditation retreat coming up on September 25th. So registration is available on the website, and that is offered on a donation basis, as always. I think the Juanita retreat has one private room and one shared room available. So we're pretty close to full on that. And yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, well, thank you. And yeah, so yeah, your daughter's coming. So yeah, so that freed up one single room. So there's like 3 spots at the Juanita retreat potentially. If anyone's still interested, that's October 13th, Juanita at Springs Ranch. And then I just did want to thank, I know that Rachel and Pam and Jessica put it out there that I turned 60. So thanks for letting everyone know that. Appreciate it. And that many people, you encourage them to make donations to the Dharma Center. And so just wanted to thank, it was such an outpouring of care. And I want to thank all of you. It was very generous and very kind. So thank you very much. Creates the conditions for the Dharma to maintain. All right, let us go ahead now and dedicate the merit that we have already cultivated today. And I can pop that up on the screen here for people. So we set our motivation. That's our motivation. We do an action, karma, motivation, action, and now we dedicate this for the benefit of all beings and for our own continued growth. So just taking a moment and let us dedicate. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha.